Africa. We are the wind in the sails of your business. We are your compass. Chart your course towards your targets. Africa Business Radio. Towards a profitable Africa.
Africa is rising, they say. But Africa must rise with its people. There is no Africa without its people. How then do we harness Africa's wealthy people? Through social change and development. Social Conscience with NASA commits to Aspiration 6 of the Africa Agenda 2063 and the Global Development Goals. We advocate social change and development that will inspire the transformation that keeps Africa rising. Join us every week at 6:30 p.m. GMT +1. Hello, Africa and the rest of the world. You are welcome to another thought-provoking episode of Social Conscience with NASA, SCWN, live on Africa Business Radio. I am NASA, your host with the most and the voice of social justice. I'm pursuing the dream to keep Africa rising. If you're wondering, Social Conscience with NASA is essentially conversations around megatrends and development issues that impact our societies while seeking ways to harness or curb them through insights from various sources. Today, I come bearing gifts. So 40 listeners on the show stand a chance to win free wellness coaching sessions on problem-solving therapy, courtesy of Rotary, Health Mind, and Inuka Foundation. So if you're listening to the show, then you stand a chance to win this free wellness coaching session. But here's the catch. You're stuck with me till the end of the show to find out how you can win. So if you're listening, as usual, I started the show last week and it was an exciting session with Akitunde Oyebode, and I'm looking forward to another exciting session today. I usually start with a story. So my story today is around the topic we're going to be discussing today. So a couple of years ago, I recall feeling tired, generally unwell, and a bit cranky. And being the typical hypochondriac, I went to the doctors. Doctors carried out tests. Tests came back fine. So I was asked to go home, get some rest, etc. A few days later, I still didn't feel 100%, or so I thought. So I went back again to the doctor, and the doctor says, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you physiologically. But then this time, she proceeded to ask me a few questions about my lifestyle, work, etc. And then she made me complete a short form that was meant to help assess my state of mind, albeit at a very high level. After the consultation, the doctor recommended a low dose of antidepressants and to practice mindfulness, some sort of yoga, meditation stuff. So, but that's not the story, right? So I go back, and the reaction from my family members was what got me, right? So I tell someone like my mom that, the doctor has recommended antidepressants, and you can imagine a typical Nigerian mother reactions like, I reject it in Jesus' name, that sort of thing. So my point is, in these climes, right, those sort of things are not like part of our culture. So you know what I did? I didn't take those meds, and I figured there was nothing I needed more than just a bit of rest, etc. And I was fine in truth. But as educated and exposed as I was, I low-key subscribed to the notion that as an African, depression was not a thing, right? So, thing is, with such socio-cultural beliefs, it is no wonder that Africa as a region has a very low mental health care worker to patient ratio of about 1.4 per 100,000 patients, compared with the global average of 9 to 100,000. And this is mind-boggling for me, because when you make the link to Africa's growing youth population, who are already struggling to earn a livelihood in a highly competitive labor market, and their susceptibility to mental disorder, then you begin to ask a lot of questions. Our socio-cultural beliefs, are we taking this seriously? Do we even have the infrastructure, the personnel, etc. to actually curb this menace, if you like. Tomorrow, Saturday, October 10, is World Mental Health Day. And the topic for today is Empowering the African Youth, the Case for Mental Independence. Now, joining me in a few minutes to discuss this topic and to share some insights is a gentleman who believes that freedom is the ability to choose your state of mind and is the only solution to the emancipation of the African continent. Very interesting concept, and I can't wait to discuss this topic with him. But before I engage the special guest, please stay on as we take a quick break, and please do not go anywhere. We'll be back.
The wind in the sails of your business. We are your compass. Chart your course towards your targets. Africa Business Radio. Towards a profitable Africa.
Africa is rising, they say. But Africa must rise with its people. There is no Africa without its people. How then do we harness Africa's wealthy people through social change and development? Social Conscience with NASA commits to Aspiration 6 of the Africa Agenda 2063 and the Global Development Goals. We advocate social change and development that will inspire the transformation that keeps Africa rising. Join us every week at 6:30 p.m. GMT +1. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with me. And if you're just tuning in, it's still Social Conscience with NASA on Africa Business Radio, and I'm your host, NASA. The topic remains Empowering the African Youth, the Case for Mental Independence. And the gentleman discussing this with me today is Dr. Kenneth Uwajeh. He's the Executive Director of the Healthy Mind Foundation and a West Africa Certified Specialist in Psychiatry with a Master's in Public Health from George Washington University. One of the key objectives of the foundation is to expunge the stigma around mental illness through an intervention called the Psych to CEO. The Psych to CEO is a 360-degree mental health service delivery system that takes a patient from the psychiatric wards to the CEO suite. Kenneth strongly believes that mental resilience gives emotional and financial freedom. Healthy Mind Foundation, through various partners, has served over 1 million Nigerians through awareness, coaching, mentoring, medication and therapy solutions both online and in person. Kenneth, as a past Rotary President, Resident Dr. President, Student Ambassador at George Washington, and an award-winning Toastmaster, has used his leadership platforms to spread the gospel of mental health. His ultimate desire is to share the gospel of mental health as a panacea for the African situation, which is hinged on freedom, the choice to choose our state of mind. Welcome, Kenneth, my fellow Toastmaster. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I must thank you for the random conversation that inspired the need to discuss this topic.
Well, I thank you very much, Nasa. It's a pleasure to be here. Like you rightly stated, my mission, my passion, my vision is to spread the gospel of mental health and pretty much to expunge the plague of stigma. So it's an honor to be here. I look forward to doing everything I can to create a healthier mind.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we will jump right into it. So Kenneth, when I put out the flyer for this show, and the topic was something of a conundrum because, it left a number of people wondering, and, I got asked this question, what is mental independence? What's that even about? So I'd like to start from there. What is mental independence and how does it relate to mental disorder, if at all there is any sort of nexus or linkage?
Oh, thank you very much. Mental independence is as simple as the ability to choose your state of mind, or to choose what you refer to as mentality. Okay. Like Nigeria fought for its independence from the colonial masters, where we're able to control our system of government and governance. We're able to elect our representatives across all spheres of the society and across all cadres of government without undue interference from the externals. However, we know that the externals would also play a role in our lives. So the individual having the ability to govern his thoughts, that will determine his feelings, and that will guide his or her actions. That's what it means to be mentally independent. A mental disorder is a situation in which the individual lacks capacity to achieve control of his thoughts, feelings, or actions. But not just that, because every now and then you get heartbroken, of course, your thoughts are distorted. But what happens in the case of a mental disorder is that the loss of independence in any of these three spheres I have mentioned, thoughts, feelings, and actions, results in a situation where the individual is not able to take care of himself or herself. The individual is not able to interact or relate with people in their immediate environment, say family. The individual is not able to function occupationally, say a job or as a student at school. And the individual is not able to relate with the larger society, which has to do with, your neighbors, your church members, your mosque members, the police, the legal authorities. So anything that affects the individual's mind, so much so as to compromise his ability to function with himself, with his immediate environment, with his occupation, or with society at large, is what constitutes a disorder, as against the word an illness. So if an individual loses independence, and yet can cope with all of these four domains, we would not categorize that as a disorder. The person is just a peculiar person.
Peculiar, you say? Interesting. I know we had a different word for this, but we're on radio. Okay.
Yes. So are they connected? Absolutely.
Okay. So what is that connection?
The connection, I'd like you to view it as a spectrum.
Okay.
With total independence at the left and loss of dependence at the right.
Right.
Extreme right. Every day you and I experience stresses. Biological stresses, psychological, social stresses. So biological, you fall ill, I fall ill, you get into labor. Stressful, that's what I hear. I haven't been in labor yet. Psychological stresses, you get...
So stresses are external factors, right?
What do you say?
So stresses are external factors, which would be biological, social, environmental, right?
Yes.
Those are
psychological, yes.
Right.
They are factors in the environment.
Okay.
What makes them stressful is the internal interpretation of milieu. So for example, if I had $1 billion in my bank account now, I'll be smiling to the bank and you'll probably be calling me more often than you do. But if Bill Gates had $1 billion in his account, he'd probably be contemplating suicide, because to him that's broke and to me that's heaven. So the reason I make to state this is because it's really not about what happens around you. More importantly is what
how you
happens
internalize it. Right.
And that's the difference between freedom in my own belief and liberty. So your freedom cannot be taken from you because it's an internal construct. But your liberty can be taken away from you. You can be incarcerated, you can be put in jail. That's an external structure. So, I would like to speak about Nelson Mandela, for example. He was incarcerated for 27 years. He was in prison. Most people would be down and out, right? And infiltrated with hate. But he was incarcerated, and what he referred to his prison wardens as were his bodyguards and his security personnel. That was a clear-cut symbol of freedom he had, despite the fact that his liberty was taken away from him.
And that we can call mental independence or mental freedom.
Exactly.
Freedom. Fantastic.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's a symbol of freedom. And that's why when he got out of jail, like the average person would want to attack people who hurt them. But he was still free from within. And the chains or the bars in front of him had not crippled his mind Therefore, he was still free, and that's why he didn't come up with the gospel of hate. He still fought for freedom, what he stood for before he went in, and the same thing he stood for when he came out. So it was the same man that went in and came out just 27 years older. But sometimes it is hard. The external environment weighs so heavily on us.
Absolutely.
Within. And then we can lose our freedom because of what we see around us. But at the end of the day, biological, psychological, or social, it really depends on how we interpret the findings around us. And that's why some people in the Christian perspective say it is well, it is well. I'm not asking you to say it is delusionally well, but you're broke down and out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not well on the external, but you can make it well internally.
So are you saying it is well is some sort of expression of mental independence, like, that positive thinking?
Yes, but I am careful when I use the word positive thinking because it carries a connotation that is near delusion. Mm-hmm. You wake up in the morning, you do nothing, mm-hmm. you sulk and stay on your bed because you're broke, mm-hmm. and then you tell yourself it is well, and you believe that unmerited favors will come your way, some blessings will fall on your lap. That is not positive. That's negative thinking in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But people explain to me how it's positive, that you have to have faith. Well, faith without works is dead, but that's why I'm careful about the it is well.
Right.
Gospel.
Okay.
But with the appropriate interpretation, it is protective.
Okay. So you know what, Kenneth? I'll move to my next question, taking off of what you've just said, right? And I was having a conversation just before the show started with a gentleman in the station. And so if we're talking about mental independence and we say mental independence is some sort of freedom, right? How does that uphold positive moral values that are already broken down in society? So mental freedom or mental independence to me sounds like, okay, so I'm not guided by what society says, it's what I believe, right? My moral values. Where do we draw that line where people don't then go outside of certain boundaries and become totally reckless or harmful to society? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do, and I appreciate the question.
Okay.
Mental independence is within, not without.
Okay.
When you say you have your independence is a global phenomenon that is in every individual. So you have your independence, I have my independence. We all have our right to independence.
Right.
But if my independence impinges on yours, then that's not independence. That's I'm colonizing you.
Right.
So basically I become like the colonial masters because now my sovereignty takes over yours.
Right.
So the boundary of independence is when your independence impinges on the right of somebody else's independence. Pretty much that's as good as it gets.
Right.
Your freedom doesn't take my freedom away.
Okay.
And like I can reference a number of books. For example, in the Bible, Jesus says, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and to God what belongs to God. So pay your taxes for crying out loud, but go to church. They don't stop each other. So you want to claim you have mental independence. Your boss tells you to do A to Z, and then you tell him, no, I'm not doing A to Z because I am an independent man or woman. You will lose your job and you will be independently broke. So there are certain rules of engagement in every interaction.
Right.
And if you have chosen to be a part of that discussion or you have signed the contract, your independence doesn't break that contract. Your independence gives you the right to say, I no longer want to be a part of this contract. But your independence also says, I choose to be in this contract with these terms and conditions.
Okay.
So, yeah, the independence is not something you flip-flop with. You chose this. That was your independence. Your independence is the ability to stop choosing it. But the moment you choose, terms and conditions apply. And that's the difference. Your two things. Independence makes you make decisions and stick to the decision because it was your decision.
What if the decisions are harmful to society?
Your personal decision is harmful to society. Then it goes back to the point I made. It impinges on the independence of another individual.
So we no longer call it mental independence. What do we call it?
No. Yeah, basically you're a mental colonist, if that's what you want to call it.
Right. Okay. Mental colonist. Fair enough. Okay. So if we're talking about mental colonists, right? And when you and I were having these conversations, I asked a question around, so what are the major drivers? So I have some stats, apparently 20% of the world's young people suffer a neuropsychiatric condition, which includes disorders like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, etc., as well as alcohol and substance dependence. Now, poverty and there are other risk factors for mental disorders, poverty, unemployment, low income, which are all, development issues that are rife in Africa. Now, can this explain the growing increase in alcohol dependency and substance abuse among the youth in Africa or in Nigeria, for instance? Or shall we attribute it to the mental prison of the Western culture? Or is it both?
All right. Thanks. I will speak as a human being.
Okay.
The psychiatrist might take a backseat at this point in time.
Sure.
I think it's a combination of factors.
Okay.
However, I believe in the gospel of extreme ownership. Meaning you choose what happens to you. Like we talked about external factors and the internal self. So yes, there are social factors that push us to do certain things. But we decide to put the bottle of alcohol between our lips in some instances.
Okay.
When we talk about dependence, dependence is what people refer to as addiction, substance use.
Correct.
There are a plethora of factors that have to do with it. Biological, psychological, social.
Shall we focus on the social and...
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So there's a familial predisposition based on genetic changes we refer to as epigenetics. But that would probably cost us 2 weeks for me to explain. I'm not sure yet. And that's interesting.
No.
So,
yeah.
I probably would just jump to sociological factors.
Okay.
There's a lot of stress around us. There is the position of the African continent, which is in tune with globalization, which is the world is becoming one small village. And we're exchanging culture. And part of our exchange, we are having this rat race mentality, which is what exists in the Western world, where we have a capitalist system. Where every young person is trying to hit the next best deal, trying to make it, try to get big, and put undue pressure on ourselves. When you put undue pressure on yourself, you induce stress. And there's this concept of egotism that I refer to as the belief you can do everything right now. You can do everything. Yeah. But not at the same time and not immediately. So if I've never run a 100-meter race in less than a minute, I shouldn't expect to run it in 9 seconds. Time is a process. And then everybody wants to, in quotes, blow.
Exactly.
So when you try to blow and you haven't built, you end up blowing up from within. And then you live in a state of despair. How do you cope with sad situations? You have two approaches. You have what referred to as the adaptive and the maladaptive. The adaptive are ways that build you and you grow through the process of pain. And the maladaptive ways are the ways that push you back further and diminish you. Alcoholism, use of psychoactive substances of whatever sort.
Definitely maladaptive. So do you say adaptive or maladaptive? I would say.
Yes. Okay. Adaptive helps you adapt. Maladaptive destroys you in the process of what you consider adaptation. And in the maladaptive segment, you have alcoholism. Of course, I drink a glass of wine. You remember my speech about alcohol?
I do.
It's simple something like, I feel all right. I'm not against calming down and have a good time. But when the bottle controls you and you don't control the bottle, it becomes a problem. And the bottle controls you when you lose your mental independence and you depend on the bottle to cope with situations. So you don't forget the pain and the anguish. You just lost your job. And then you take alcohol as a sedative and as an agent to induce amnesia. You intend to drown your sorrow. So first day it works, you feel calm, you don't remember your worries, you shout at your wife or your children or whatever, and then you sleep well that night. But you wake up the next morning, you are still broke and out of the job. And then you can't handle the pain. What do? To solve the problem, you go back to the bar. After all, it's a reliable ally. But at the point, you become slave of the bar and slave of the bottle and can cope no further until you go back to it. So what I'm saying to you in essence is stress makes us make decisions to cope. We can make adaptive decisions or maladaptive decisions. When you make maladaptive decisions, it can lead to substance abuse and dependence. When you make adaptive decisions, it helps you grow. You devise and brings, okay, I've lost a job. Nobody wants to employ me. I have a degree in something nobody is interested in. Okay, what am I good at as a person? I can talk. Even if you don't pay me, I'll keep talking to you. So, okay, I can talk. Maybe I should become a Toastmaster and then learn to speak. And guess what? When I speak, people listen, they get motivated. Can I practice motivational speech? Who the hell is going to listen to me? What the hell do I know? And let me, what's the cost implication? I'll talk, they'll laugh at me. I'm even laughing at myself.
Right.
And then you go along that lines and you perfect. And guess what? People listen to you. I'm like, wow, they're listening to me. I won't even listen to myself. But hey, they're listening. And then somebody says, Kenneth, why didn't you just come for a show? Please, we can't pay you as much as we think you deserve. I know. Okay, can you just take 50K for this afternoon? And I'm looking at myself like,
how did I get here?
When I had a job, I was earning 42K. Now someone's giving me 50K for 1 hour. But I have to speak with my agents. I will start for now, getting creative. The point is, I persevered. Right. I pushed through, and I discovered a way to make it. I'm not saying this is a story for everybody, but I think there's nobody I've met in my life, and I'm not that old anyways, that did not have something good or unique about them. It's just most people are not willing to pay the price
ready
to perfect. Yeah. So the point is, stress can take you to adaptive or maladaptive. However, when you have a lot of stress, it makes it harder to use adaptive mechanisms. It increases the temptation to use the maladaptive. And that's the problem. So I don't have a job. I graduated from school. I've done NYC. It's been 2 years. Fine. I tried to figure ways out. 2 weeks after, God forbid, my uncle who paid my school fees dies and I was staying in his house in Lagos. Food no sure anymore. The next thing, my brother who promised to pay my rent this month stopped speaking my calls. Multiplier effect is harder to cope that way. That's the truth.
So what happens in that case, Kenneth? So, and this is the reality of a lot of the Nigerian youth or African youth, if you like, to look at it broadly. You know, I mean, and when you talk about adaptive and maladaptive, what's it called, situations or solutions, right? It sounds straightforward. And for someone like me, I think it almost is very logical. Like, oh, of course, you know, why would I turn to something that would harm me? And I don't know why I'm that way or why I'm able to think that way. But there are people who don't have that, should I say, mental strength or strength of mind to sort of consider or to be hopeful, to think, you know what, this can't be the end of the road, this is the end of the world. How can someone, you know, what happens? So you know, the situation you just described, stress can take you to maladaptive, that, you know, the stress can be really high. What do you do with that kind of person? Is this the time where you get the intervention of the professionals that we don't have enough of? Because it's until you've lost your mind and you're probably walking naked on the streets that people then start to think that you do have a problem. But, you know, we hear of people committing suicide and all of that, and you hear people asking, how bad was it? But you don't know people. Some people have different thresholds, is what I'm saying. So where does the professional help come in? Where should people seek professional help?
Okay. I think people should seek help the moment they need to. How do you know when you need to?
Exactly. How do you know?
I think it varies from individual to individual. I can tell you what I think as a person. I can tell you what I've seen with my experience being a psychiatrist. Okay. But at the end of the day, it's really about you to decide how you cope. Okay, so first thing I would say is you feel stressed and overwhelmed. You might not need a psychiatrist. You might just talk to a pastor. For example, I'm Catholic. Okay. I feel stressed. I go to the priest. I confess my numerous sins, and then I talk about the other things that are not sins. It's what referred to as ventilation or catharsis, if I want to get really psychoanalytic. That's one way to cope.
So just expressing.
Yes. Okay. And listen to advice. There's also what we call evaluation. So you're not the first person that's lost a job. You're not the first person who's going to be broke. You're not the first person whose relative has died. As sad as it is, there's nothing new under the earth. What do? You say, okay, this is the situation I find myself in. What are the options? Google what people have done in the past. Read books. Study. Right. That's one approach.
Okay.
Another approach is the positive appraisal. You say to yourself, okay, for something bad happening to me, now something good is coming next. All I need to do is make the best of the situation. It boils down to one thing, in my opinion. Never giving up and discipline. When you talk about some people don't have the mental strength, it's like saying some guys are not buff. They don't have the musculature. You're not buff. Go to the gym now. Carry weight. It's not harder than that. If you can't go to the gym, do push up in your back in your room. You feel me? The point is this: mental strength is not something you are gifted with directly. It's something you build consistently.
Okay.
It's something you're going to have to build and work at every day. It's not a situation where you have, I have fixed it and I'm fixed for life. It's a lie. You're never fixed for life when it comes to life challenges, mental, physical, spiritual, whatever it is. It's a daily process of working on yourself. What I have done personally to cope with extreme stress that I have faced is positive appraisal, but more importantly, I listen to practical people who have succeeded despite challenges. I have some mentors like Nelson Mandela, I mentioned a couple of times, but I also have a guy called Elon Musk who decided to go into the space industry when he was not a space engineer. He couldn't find any good engineers who wanted to work for him because everybody thought he was crazy. He went ahead, read the books, and started building spaceships. Of course, he didn't have a degree in space engineering. 3 of it blew up, and he lost millions of dollars. He got a loan and lost the money. What did he do? He built the 4th one. And when they asked him, were you going to give up? He said, no, I don't ever give up. I don't know how rich he is now, but I don't think losing $1 million is fun to anybody.
Of course not. You commit.
The point is, yeah, like seriously. And I recently heard an article about it, but I don't know if this is true, that he lost a lot of money.
Yes, I read that article.
So the point is, you're going to have to make a decision. The hard part is when you're indecisive. That's the hardest part.
But a lot of people are indecisive. A lot of people don't even know what to do.
And I can't make that decision for you. And like we're talking about this, freedom is an internal construct. I can make your life perfect and you still be depressed.
Very true.
I can make your life horrible and you will still have your charisma. At the end of the day,
it's up to you.
A decision. It's up to you. I'm sorry, daddy can't help you. Money can't help you. That beautiful, awesome girl that you're hanging out with cannot help you within. It's really about you. And that's also what I think about the financial situation of the African continent. We will stay in perpetual penury as long as we expect our colonial masters to master us by giving us money. There's a saying, put your money where your mouth is. Whoever feeds you or whoever pays the piper dictates the tune. As long as we run somebody else to feed us, to help us with our daily survival, to give us food in Nigeria, how can you have independence from the person who keeps you alive? You cannot.
Are you saying Nigeria does not have mental independence?
Nigeria as a country is not a person.
Okay. So I'm just obviously as a figure of speech, or if you like, a metaphor, to say that
we don't have economic independence.
We don't have what? Economic independence. Okay, but that's different, right? So you're doing that comparison or using it as an analogy to say that if somebody has some sort of control over you, then you're not independent. But in this case, so what's colonizing the individual? What
colonizes you and I vary. Okay. What gives us freedom is the same. A personal decision. Nobody can do that for you or me. We can make life easier. We can reduce stressors. But you've heard of billionaires complete suicide. You've heard of millionaires. For example, Whitney Houston. Who would think somebody with a voice of gold would want to take her life? That was a mental health disorder.
Okay. Do you think, did he start off being a mental health disorder? It must have started from stress to losing her mental independence, because obviously with all the attention and the issues. So, you know, she was abusing substance and etc. So she took time to get there. You know, she wasn't born with a mental disorder. That's what I'm saying. So
exactly. So this is the point where we're trying to come in with Healthy Mind and Inuka Foundation.
Okay.
And with Rotary. Unfortunately, you're joining us to do this. We understand that the spectrum starts from what we say in the local parlance. From club dance, they take stats. So you clap, you shake your body, and then.
Yeah.
So it is from the little problems that go unresolved. It is from the dirt we bury under the carpet that we build a mountain.
That's true.
Of problems. So with problem-solving therapy, which is not for those with mental illnesses, although they can benefit from it, but problem-solving therapy is for people who are still functioning in society, but have certain stresses that bother them, that plague their mind, but they haven't broken down. Therefore, they can benefit from
still correct.
Coaches. Yeah, coaches are not mental health professionals. They're not psychiatrists, they're not psychologists, they're not social workers. They are just you and I with training on a specific form of therapy.
Right.
For those who have not broken down, for those who have not lost functioning, according to the process I talk about: self, interpersonal, occupational, and societal. So if you sweep out the dirt today, you don't have a mountain of dirt tomorrow. So when people are able to address stressors in a timely fashion, it never builds enough to incapacitate them or to incarcerate their minds. It's just coped with one day at a time. You never let it build up to the point where you cannot handle. For example, a lot of women in Nigerian kitchens, they wash everything at once.
That's how we were taught.
You can master the art. So those of you who know how to master that are fine. But it's overwhelming. Like, I basically would run out of the kitchen. I use the spoon, I wash the spoon.
But people will look at you as lazy. So you see, there are also the socio-cultural norms that sort of make this more stressful. So there are expectations, there are certain things that you're expected to do in a certain type of way. And so there's that external pressure. Nobody's telling you, but it's just there, unspoken, tacit, like, you know, I'm supposed to just do all these things at once. I'm supposed to be a superwoman.
You're not supposed to do anything.
Well, that's not what we know, right? We're supposed to act a certain way and speak a certain way. You see, this is why I ask, okay, we're not supposed to do anything, which is basically, I've been raised a certain type of way and I'm supposed to act a certain type of way. When I deviate somewhat from that sort of rule book or what has been taught to me, then I'm a rebel of sorts, or I'm badly behaved. And so that's where I'm asking. So I appreciate, that independence. So I subscribe to that. Of course, you don't have to conform to what you've been told to do. But I also then question, which is why I asked the question prior, where do you draw the line from mental independence and extreme freedom, where you're just totally harmful or just a very reckless person? Do you see?
Okay, let's go to the kitchen.
Okay.
Does your washing one spoon at a time affect anybody's independence in any way? Does it hurt anybody?
No, of course not. Of course, I know it doesn't. But somewhere in my mind, I just think I'm supposed to do everything.
I know. And it's okay with your mind. You were not raised by yourself. You were raised by your parents and society.
And the environment, exactly.
Exactly the point. So independence is where you're able to think for yourself and say, it's smarter and safer and faster for me to wash the spoon the moment I use it than to build a mountain of plates that would overwhelm me. Because I don't think, and this is my opinion, that when you have 100 spoons to wash, you wash them better than if you washed one at a time. You probably pour a lot of water to rinse a lot of what you can't see, and then you pour a lot of soup and you're out. You have to also be fast, because guess what? You're a super mom. You have other things to do. So as long as what you're doing, be it rebellious, be it non-conformist, as long as it does not harm others, then it's fine. For example, I belong to the school of Martin Luther King, where he talked about freedom and walking the streets, peaceful protest. I was never for Malcolm X, where he preached harm those who harm you. If you harm those who harm you, then you become them. That's my opinion. So the point is, as long as what your independence, as long as your rebellion, as long as your non-conformist stance does not impair or impede another person's independence, then just do it. Because if you take a look at historical figures, if you take a look at people who have made a name for themselves, they were non-conformists. The only way to be remarkable is to be a non-conformist. You break the rules, but you don't break the law. Because if you break the law, you end up in prison. Except you chose to break the law as a service to the law, which is a whole other kettle of fish. But the point is, you break the rules. The rule is, put all the plates together, wash them at once. That's the rule. The law is, wash the plates, don't let the house stink. Capiche? Just don't.
So the how is not necessarily the important? Is do you? So I hear what you're saying, which is what I sort of also say. What's the objective, right? What are we trying to do, and what's the best way to achieve it without having to conform to a particular way of doing? Okay.
Perfect. You know the funny thing, when washing machines first came to Nigeria, as I recall, I was rather young, in the 1980s, it was considered a sign of laziness. Using a washing machine.
Of course. It still is by some people today.
So if you want to conform or whatever that is, or you do not want to what they refer to as a rebel, then wash with your hand and you go tired. And you have to enter Lagos traffic for 4 hours before you get to. Then you have to get to work 1 hour before it starts, depends on where you work. You have to leave work 1 hour after it starts. So basically you spend 10 hours at work, 4 hours on the road, that's 14 hours. You come back home, you need to help your kids with their assignments. You need to answer your husband or wife. If you're a man, you need to listen to what happened to your wife that day. And better remember what she said because terms and conditions apply. If you're a wife, you need to probably cook, depends on what kind of home you run. You basically have to, in quotes, give yourself sense. Come, I'm freaking going to use this washing machine or I will die true. That's exactly the reason why you need mental independence. Mental independence helps you cope with your life, not my life. Like I'm the man in my house.
Yeah.
I can say I don't have to use washing machine. Of course, my mouth is sharp. I don't wash anything. So I can declare that it is laziness. But if my wife is wise enough to assume that my declaration means it's the gospel, therefore she would not use the washing machine, I'm still going to ask her to give me my meal because if she doesn't feed me, I probably will die of hunger when I'm hungry. I'm going to still expect her to do her duties, including wash the clothes that I said the washing machine was a sign of laziness.
Right.
And if she doesn't take the cue and do what she needs to survive, then she will build up stress. She will get overwhelmed. She will break down. And guess what? She will say it's my fault.
Naturally.
But guess what? I'm not breaking down. I'm chilling. God forbid, if need be, they get her admitted. I will pay the bills. I will say sorry. But the only person who broke down here was her.
Who decided to conform because she thought your word was Bible.
Yes, because she doesn't know that a washing machine is not a sin in the 10 Commandments. And guess what? It's my fault. It's not my fault. I was a causative factor. I helped out. But she also didn't tell me to use paper and barrel to write off my case notes. And I said, paper and barrel is the way my grandfathers did it. It's a sign of being an astute physician. I'm typing my notes. I'm mailing them. I'm not using the snail mail. But she chose to listen to my washing machine gospel. Fine. At the end of the day, it boils down to
you personally, your decision. What you know is important. Yeah. Absolutely. What feeds your soul? Okay.
What works for you?
What works for you? I like what we're talking about. I like what you're saying. So I'm going to ask my next question. And the topic today is around empowering the African youth. So with all we've said, naturally, I think that mental independence is important for empowering the African youth. So the question then is, how do we drive such interventions? And who are the stakeholders responsible for this? Does the government have a role to play? Is it just left to us as individuals? Is there a way that this can be institutionalized? Because the concern is that, we have a huge youth population who, on the one hand, have become a destabilizing force in society. But on the other hand, they're the future of the continent, So we need to make sure that, this large population of individuals are protected. And so who's responsible for this? Because I've heard all you said and it sounds like, it's common sense and some of them, but some people just don't understand it. They don't even understand. So how can we help those people that don't get it? Right? And who will do that work?
Thank you for asking. To start with, the first question is, who is responsible? You.
Okay.
I know I'm trying to sound commercially acceptable so that I don't sound like a renegade or somebody who's insensitive. So I'm thinking of the nice
realistic.
The nice words to put this. If it was just you and I, you probably know what I would say. So I'm thinking of the nice words to put it for radio. But responsibility and fault are not the same thing. So I cheated on this girl with her sister, and her mother caught me. Her father said I'm terrible. And she became heartbroken, and got admitted. I never recovered from it.
Okay.
I'm a terrible guy. God knows. I'm so terrible. Why a sister? Of all the girls on the surface of the earth, I'm such a bad guy. I agree. I'm that bad guy. Correct. Guess what? After I did it, I became a Christian. I gave my life to Christ. I'm very religious. I say my prayers. And I'm very successful. And because of that mistake I made, I have sworn never to do it again. And I lead an exemplary life. The girl, on the other hand, is in and out of the rehabilitation unit for substance abuse because she was so heartbroken. She had a psychotic breakdown. She was so heartbroken. She decided to turn to alcohol, weed, and eventually prostitution to pay for the alcohol and the weed. It is my fault, but it is her responsibility to take care of herself.
So I get it that, as an individual, it's up to me, and I take responsibility for my actions.
For not providing.
Not providing what now?
Appropriate mental health services. We have 8 major psychiatric hospitals in Nigeria with a maximum capacity, as best I know, of keeping 5,000 patients in all the beds. And according to the WHO, we have 50 million people with mental health conditions in Nigeria, and we have 5,000 beds for 50 million people. We have 8 neuropsychiatric hospitals in the country with 36 states. We have 250 psychiatrists, plus or minus some who have gone to the UK.
Yeah.
For a country with 50 million patients, meaning each person has 1 to 200,000. To get into a residency program in psychiatry, you need to know somebody who knows somebody. You sometimes need to call up favors, you sometimes need to call friends. But you get into the residency training program, and occasionally the government thinks you don't deserve your pay, and then your pay is suspended. And guess what? You go on strike. When you go on strike, your program is delayed. When you get back on track, the momentum you built is lost. But guess what? You have an exam in 6 months. What do? You read, you study hard. You neglect patients in the process of studying because you will not sacrifice yourself on the altar of their ambition. And then you write the examination. And guess what? There's a program called the NTI. They send you a letter. Are you interested? We'll pay you 10 times what you earn each month. And guess what? Your wife and kids can come along. What happens? I leave. So, yes, the government has its fault. But what can you and I do that the government doesn't need to do for us? You and I can start off by talking about our mental health concerns, which do not necessarily mean disorders. You can share with a friend, I'm feeling uneasy, I'm feeling stressed. You can speak to your pastor, your imam, about things that stress you before they become debilitating. If you have the wherewithal, you can seek services of a therapist, a counselor, a coach. But now, we're able to provide 40 free services through our partnership with you.
Absolutely.
For people who can receive problem-solving therapy.
Yep.
Hey, what about you who has gone through the problem-solving therapy and no longer has serious issues? Can you volunteer? It takes us less than a week to teach you how to become a problem-solving therapist, and we continue teaching you so you get better. Do you need to be a psychiatrist? No. So yes, the government has not provided enough psychiatrists for us. The government has made it hard for those who have a passion for psychiatry. But you and I can volunteer while we are stable, while we consider ourselves sound, while we have benefited from the system in one way or the other. You and I can volunteer. You and I can help the next person. You and I can be a listening ear. And the mistake a lot of us make when we are listening ears is the fact that we become listening tongues. We just don't listen, we also speak. Many a time, most people have the solutions to their problem from within because they have a 360 perspective of what the problem is. But you and I end up giving advice with limited knowledge, when more often than not, and this is my experience as a psychiatrist and in psychotherapy sessions, regular psychotherapy and psychoanalytic psychotherapy, is that there is a power of listening and there is an extreme power of the awkward silence. Because more often than not, patients show appreciation for being listened to with non-verbal cues. So the patient speaks to me and I'm like, wow. And then I bend my head and look, and they can see I share of their pain. And they tell me, I have never felt this much listened to in my life. Thank you. I've had gunshot victims who had post-traumatic stress disorder come to me with that situation. and they felt healed and they felt whole. You don't need to be a psychiatrist to listen. You don't need to be a psychiatrist to volunteer to be a coach. So who's the solution? Whose responsibility is it? It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's our responsibility. It's the responsibility of everybody listening to this radio station. What can you do? Do what you can where you are with what you have. You're not a psychiatrist. Fine. But you have somebody you can pay attention to.
You have a support system.
You're driving on the express. You can choose to drive like a crazy person or a sane person. Because the moment you veer into somebody's lane, in quote, you chance the guy because you're too sharp. And then the person goes into a state of stress. You increase cortisol. Cortisol induces stress. And this person already has stress that he's going to meet at home and stress that he left from work. Can you decide not to be the problem this time? I'm just asking you to do it today. Tomorrow you can make a different decision. Just don't make it worse for the person than it was.
Next to you. So basically, what I hear you say is it's all in our hands as individuals. We all have a role to play individually, collectively, trying not to, put out those triggers that would continue to then cause stress for people that would then push them off the limit. That's what I hear you say. Well, Kenneth, it's been a very, very engaging conversation, and I wish we had more time for more questions. Time has actually gone faster than I thought. I would have taken questions from the audience, but it doesn't look like we have a lot of time for that now. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Kenneth. It's been an amazing session, very insightful. And I think what I take out of this is basically, yes, the African youth wants to be empowered, but it's in your hands as a person to develop your mental strength. Nobody's going to do it for you. But then what we can also do collectively as a society and the key stakeholders is also to provide those platforms or avenues to promote awareness about what people can do, and even your support system to, provide that listening ear, right?
Absolutely. Two things. One, people can get problem-solving therapy, and two, for those who have questions, I don't mind them sending it to you and then I will answer it later.
We'll do that. Thank you very much, Kenneth.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for listening.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And so I promised that I came with gifts. So I'm going to now share with you how to win these gifts. So first 40 people to follow my Instagram handle @with_NASA. That's @WITH_NASA. And send a DM with the word freedom. You'll get this free coaching session voucher. Very simple. That's all you need to do. But before I go, here are my last few words for today. I once heard someone say that if you don't draw your personal boundaries, society will draw them for you. It's critical that as individuals and especially young people, we have boundaries that are built solidly based on our personal values and goals. So dear African youth, choose today to be mentally independent and don't let society define you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been another enthralling conversation. And as we focus on youth this month, watch out for another insightful and action-provoking episode of Social Conscience with NASA. Same time, same station, next week. Thank you for staying with me. I am yours conscientiously.